The Israel-Hamas conflict casts a long shadow. It is a conflict marked by violence, displacement, and deep-seated animosity. Understanding this complex situation requires delving into its historical roots, exploring the factors that fuel the conflict, and examining the ongoing humanitarian crisis. This analysis will offer insights into the origins of the conflict, the motivations of the key actors, and the challenges to achieving a lasting peace. The roots of the Israel-Hamas conflict can be traced back to the early 20th century. The decline of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of competing nationalisms in the region set the stage for decades of conflict. The Balfour Declaration of 1917, which expressed British support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine, further inflamed tensions between the existing Arab population and the growing Jewish community. The horrors of the Holocaust in Europe added another layer of complexity to the situation. The plight of European Jews fleeing persecution led to increased Jewish immigration to Palestine, further escalating tensions with the Arab population. The British, caught in the middle of this escalating conflict, proved unable to find a solution that satisfied both sides. The seeds of the Israel-Hamas conflict were sown long before the creation of either Israel or Hamas. To understand this complex issue, we need to rewind to the early 20th century. As the Ottoman grip weakened, Great Britain emerged. After World War I, Britain was granted a mandate over Palestine by the League of Nations. The Balfour Declaration of 1917 supported a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. This declaration sparked tensions between the Jewish and Arab communities. The year 1948 marked a pivotal turning point. As the British mandate for Palestine came to an end, Jewish leaders declared the establishment of the State of Israel. This declaration, while a momentous occasion for the Jewish people, ignited a war with neighboring Arab states, a war that would forever scar the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War, known by Israelis as the War of Independence and by Palestinians as the Nakba catastrophe, resulted in a decisive victory for Israel. However, victory came at a heavy price. The war led to the displacement of an estimated 700,000 Palestinians who fled or were expelled from their homes, becoming refugees in neighboring countries. Section 3. The formation of Israel and the rise of Arab nationalism. The establishment of Israel had profound consequences for the Middle East. For the Jewish people, it marked the culmination of a long-held dream, a return to their ancestral homeland after centuries of diaspora. For Palestinians, it represented a loss of their homeland, a displacement that fueled resentment and a desire for return. The creation of Israel also had a significant impact on the Arab world. The defeat in the 1948 war was a blow to Arab pride and led to a period of introspection and soul-searching. The loss also fueled the rise of Arab nationalism, a movement that transcended national borders and sought to unify Arab countries under a common identity. Section 4. The Six-Day War and its aftermath. Seeds of Hamas. The Six-Day War of 1967 marked another turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The war, sparked by escalating tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors, resulted in a swift and decisive Israeli victory. In just 6 days, Israel captured the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. The war had far-reaching consequences for the region. From Intifada to Islamic resistance, the genesis of Hamas. Palestinian frustration festered under Israeli occupation in the 70s and 80s. The first Intifada in 1987 marked a turning point. This mass uprising signaled a new chapter in the Palestinian struggle. From this resistance, Hamas emerged, determined to chart a new course. Founded in December 1987 by Sheikh Ahmed Yassin, Hamas embraced an Islamist identity. Their message of resistance resonated in the Gaza Strip. Social services and growing support. While Hamas's commitment to armed resistance attracted attention, it was their dedication to social welfare that cemented their roots in Palestinian society. In the impoverished Gaza Strip, where unemployment was rampant and services lacking, Hamas filled the void left by a struggling Palestinian Authority. They established schools, hospitals and charities, earning the trust and loyalty of many Palestinians. Section 3, A House Divided, Hamas, Fatah and the Battle for Gaza. The relationship between Hamas and Fatah has been characterized by rivalry, mistrust and often outright conflict. Fatah, founded by Yasser Arafat in 1959, had long been the dominant force in Palestinian politics. Hamas rejected the legitimacy of Israel and embraced armed struggle. This disagreement created a deep rift between the two factions. In 2006, Hamas won a surprise victory in Palestinian legislative elections. The power-sharing agreement quickly unraveled, leading to violent clashes in Gaza in 2007. Hamas emerged victorious, seizing control of the Gaza Strip and expelling Fatah loyalists. Section 4. The Gaza Stronghold, Hamas in Power and the Price of Resistance. Following its takeover of Gaza in 2007, Hamas solidified its control over the territory, establishing a de facto government and asserting its authority over all aspects of life. Despite facing international isolation and a crippling Israeli blockade, Hamas maintained its grip on power, relying on a combination of social welfare programs, religious legitimacy, and a strong security apparatus to maintain order and suppress dissent. The Israeli blockade, imposed after Hamas's takeover, had a devastating impact on Gaza's economy and humanitarian situation. The blockade, which restricted the flow of goods, people and essential supplies, plunged Gaza into poverty and despair. The year 2021 witnessed a dramatic escalation of violence between Israel and Hamas, a conflict rooted in long-standing tensions over Jerusalem, a city sacred to both Jews and Muslims. The holy month of Ramadan, a time of prayer and reflection for Muslims worldwide, became a flashpoint for violence, as clashes erupted between Palestinians and Israeli forces in and around the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, the third holiest site in Islam. Tensions had been simmering for weeks leading up to Ramadan. The planned evictions of Palestinian families from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood in East Jerusalem, a move seen by many Palestinians as part of a larger Israeli effort to displace Palestinians from the city, sparked widespread protests and condemnation. The situation escalated further during Ramadan as Israeli police clashed with Palestinian worshippers at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, firing tear gas and stun grenades into crowds, injuring hundreds. On May 10, 2021, after days of escalating tensions in Jerusalem, Hamas issued an ultimatum to Israel, demanding withdrawal from the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound and Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. Israel rejected the demands, viewing it as an attempt to undermine its sovereignty. At 6 p.m, as the ultimatum expired, Hamas launched rockets from Gaza towards Jerusalem, marking the beginning of an 11-day conflict with significant destruction. The 11-day conflict between Israel and Hamas in May 2021 drew widespread international condemnation, as the world watched in horror as the death toll mounted and images of destruction emerged from Gaza. The United Nations, the European Union, and numerous human rights organizations called for an immediate ceasefire, urging both sides to prioritize the protection of civilians and find a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The United States, while initially backing Israel's right to defend itself, faced growing pressure to take a more active role in mediating a ceasefire. President Joe Biden facing criticism from within his own party for his administration's stance on the conflict, engaged in intense diplomatic efforts, urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to de-escalate the situation and agree to a ceasefire. Section 4. A region on edge. The aftermath and lingering tensions. The 11-day conflict in May 2021 had a devastating impact on both Israelis and Palestinians. In Gaza, the conflict resulted in widespread destruction. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported over 250 deaths, including dozens of children. In Israel, the rocket fire from Gaza disrupted daily life and causing widespread anxiety and fear. The conflict left its mark on Israeli society and the seemingly intractable nature of the conflict. Section 1. A sudden storm, Hamas's audacious assault. The relative calm that followed the 2021 conflict proved to be a deceptive lull. The underlying tensions, the unresolved grievances, and the deep-seated mistrust continued to fester beneath the surface. Then, on October 7th, 2023, the region was once again plunged into chaos. The early morning quiet was shattered by a coordinated and audacious assault by Hamas, one that would mark a significant escalation in the conflict and send shockwaves across the globe. As the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah commenced, a day of celebration and religious observance, Hamas launched a multi-pronged attack against Israel, targeting both military and civilian targets. The assault, meticulously planned and executed with a level of sophistication that surprised many intelligence agencies, involved a combination of tactics that caught Israel off guard and exposed vulnerabilities in its defenses. Section 2. Operation Swords of Iron, Israel's retaliation. The Hamas attack of October 7, 2023 triggered immediate and decisive retaliation from Israel. The Israeli government, vowing to make Hamas pay an unprecedented price for the assault, launched Operation Swords of Iron, a military campaign aimed at crushing Hamas's military capabilities and restoring Israel's deterrence. The operation, characterized by its intensity and ferocity, reflected the depth of Israel's anger and determination to respond forcefully to the unprecedented attack. Within hours of the initial Hamas assault, Israeli warplanes and artillery batteries pounded targets across the Gaza Strip. The Israeli Defense Forces, employing its superior firepower and sophisticated surveillance capabilities, targeted what it described as Hamas military infrastructure, including rocket launch sites, command centers, weapons depots, and tunnel networks. The airstrikes, relentless in their intensity, illuminated the night sky over Gaza, turning the densely populated enclave into a scene of devastation. The Hamas attack on Israel and the ensuing Israeli retaliation elicited a wave of reactions from the international community, reflecting the complex geopolitical dynamics and the deeply polarized views on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. While many countries condemned the Hamas attack and expressed support for Israel's right to defend itself, others criticized the proportionality of Israel's response, expressing concern for the plight of Palestinian civilians caught in the crossfire. The United States, Israel's closest ally, condemned the Hamas attack in the strongest possible terms, reaffirming its ironclad commitment to Israel's security. The Biden administration, while expressing support for Israel's right to defend itself, also urged restraint and called for a de-escalation of the conflict, emphasizing the need to protect civilian lives and prevent further humanitarian suffering. European countries, while largely condemning the Hamas attack, expressed concern about the escalating violence and the impact on civilians. As the conflict raged on, the humanitarian toll mounted, transforming the Gaza Strip into a scene of unimaginable suffering. The relentless Israeli airstrikes, while targeting Hamas military infrastructure, also inflicted widespread damage to civilian homes, hospitals, schools, and essential infrastructure, leaving the already impoverished and densely populated enclave on the brink of collapse. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported a staggering number of casualties, with the death toll climbing into the thousands, including a disproportionate number of women and children. Hospitals, overwhelmed with the influx of wounded, struggled to cope with the sheer number of casualties, facing acute shortages of medical supplies, equipment, and trained personnel. The Gaza Strip, already reeling from years of blockade and economic hardship, has been transformed into a scene of unimaginable suffering. The relentless Israeli airstrikes have inflicted widespread damage to civilian homes, hospitals and schools, leaving the densely populated enclave on the brink of collapse. The Palestinian Ministry of Health has reported a staggering number of casualties, a grim tally that includes a disproportionate number of women and children. Hospitals, overwhelmed with the influx of wounded, are struggling to cope. Beyond the stark statistics of casualties and destruction lies a deeper human tragedy, one that transcends the physical scars of war. The conflict has upended the lives of millions of Palestinians in Gaza, shattering families, displacing communities, and leaving behind a legacy of trauma that will take generations to heal. The laughter of children, once a common sound in Gaza's streets, has been replaced by the deafening roar of explosions, a constant reminder of the ever-present danger. Thousands of families fleeing the relentless bombardment have sought refuge in UN-run schools, mosques and other makeshift shelters. These shelters, already overcrowded and ill-equipped to handle the influx, face dire conditions, with limited access to sanitation, clean water and basic necessities. Families, huddled together in cramped and unsanitary conditions, live in a state of constant fear and uncertainty, their lives on hold, their dreams shattered. Section 3. The scars of war trauma and psychological toll. The physical wounds inflicted by the conflict are readily apparent, but the invisible scars of war, the psychological trauma etched into the minds of those who have witnessed its horrors, run far deeper. The constant fear of bombardment, the loss of loved ones, the destruction of homes and communities, these experiences leave indelible marks on the human psyche, particularly on the vulnerable minds of children. Children in Gaza, having grown up under the shadow of conflict and blockade, exhibit signs of severe trauma, their childhoods tragically intertwined with the harsh realities of war. The deafening roar of explosions, the sight of mangled bodies, the constant fear of death. These experiences have become normalized, a grim backdrop to their daily lives. Many children suffer from nightmares, bedwetting and panic attacks, their young minds struggling to comprehend the horrors they have witnessed. Section 4, Beyond Gaza. The impact on Israeli civilians. While the Gaza Strip has borne the brunt of the violence and destruction, the conflict has also had a profound impact on Israeli civilians, particularly those living near the border. The constant threat of rocket fire, the fear of infiltration, and the disruption to daily life have taken a heavy toll, leaving many Israelis feeling vulnerable, anxious, and deeply uncertain about the future. The rocket fire from Gaza, while largely indiscriminate in its targeting, has resulted in civilian casualties in Israel, shattering families and communities. The piercing sound of air raid sirens, a chilling reminder of the ever-present danger, has become a grim soundtrack to life in southern Israel, sending residents scrambling for shelter, their hearts pounding in their chests. Ceasefires and their limits. As of today, May 24th, 2024, a fragile ceasefire remains in effect. The guns have fallen silent, offering a much-needed respite from the violence. The streets of Gaza are eerily quiet, the air thick with the smell of smoke. In southern Israel, the constant fear of rocket fire has subsided, replaced by an uneasy calm. But this ceasefire is merely a pause, a fragile truce that does not address the root causes of the conflict. Section 2. The long road ahead, seeking a just and lasting peace. The road to a just and lasting peace in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is long and arduous, a winding path through a landscape scarred by decades of violence, mistrust and missed opportunities. There are no easy solutions, no quick fixes to bridge the divides that have separated Israelis and Palestinians for generations. Achieving a sustainable peace will require extraordinary leadership, unwavering political will, and a fundamental shift in mindset on both sides. It demands a recognition that true security cannot be achieved through military might alone, that lasting peace cannot be built upon the foundations of occupation and discrimination. It requires a commitment to dialogue, to empathy, to understanding the narratives and aspirations of the other. It necessitates a willingness to compromise, to make painful concessions, to prioritize the well-being of future generations over the grievances of the past.